Hello and welcome to Kingston Now. I'm Jimmy Buff. This week we'll meet one of the amazing visual artists at this weekend's O Positive Festival. Just in time for Halloween, we'll talk about a Scarecrow Contest, and we'll start with John LaValle and Gary Heckleman of Habitat for Humanity. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
John, I want to start with you because you've been with Habitat for quite some time, right?
Yeah, about 15 years.
15 years. So Habitat for Humanity has been around for a lot longer than that, almost 40 years.
That's correct.
Do you know its origins, how it came to be?
It was started by a minister and his wife in Americus, Georgia, trying to address affordable housing, rural poor. And one of his neighbors, by the way, was a peanut farmer named Jimmy Carter.
Who, of course,
became, after he was president, probably the most successful post-presidency career.
And he did, and a lot of it had to do with Habitat for Humanity. And most people know of Habitat because you build houses for people. We do. And of course, the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter builds are a very important part of Habitat. Yearly, there's a project somewhere in the world, and in the case of the United States, after Katrina and other disasters, they've been concentrated in the United States, so that Habitat will bring in a train load of building supplies and do what's called a blitz build. And Jimmy Carter build in New Orleans area, they built over 100 houses in a few weeks. And in Ulster County, how many houses have we built here?
Only a dozen.
A dozen. Only?
We're trying to correct that and make sure that that dozen is rapidly expanded. And that's one of the reasons for our fundraising efforts with the Restore. And the Restore is a new project. It's not new to Habitat for Humanity on a nationwide basis. They do these in other parts of the country, but it's new for Ulster County. They do. Ironically, the first one was in Canada. And it was successful enough that it started to catch on. And it has especially been very successful in the southern U.S. Very successful. In New York, we have several. Of course, we have one in Newburgh, and Hudson, and Albany, and Schenectady, and Syracuse, Buffalo, and several others also. And just recently, we opened one here in Ulster County. It's on Route 28, just a little bit west of Kingston. And Gary, you're managing the place. How did you get involved in Habitat?
I got involved in Habitat right after Tropical Storm Irene hit our area 2 years ago, a little bit more than 2 years ago. And about 6 Woodstockers got together to start the Woodstock Flood Relief Committee. And John was a board member at that point of Habitat, and we asked Habitat if they would join the committee, and they became an instrumental member of that group because Habitat had a box truck, had a 43,000 square foot warehouse, and within a day or two we started to collect food and household supplies for Fleischmann's New York. We adopted Fleischmann's for about a month, and we made 300 meals a week and filled 2 community pantries 3 times a week. Donations were gathered from all over the county, and Habitat warehoused all of the donations. And after we finished with Fleischmann's, after a month when they were up and running on their own, Habitat continued to collect and warehouse furniture and supplies for people when they were moving back into their reclaimed homes. And Habitat was instrumental in helping over 200 families move back in after the tropical storm. And from that experience, you ended up on the Habitat board? Volunteer, board member, and now associate director.
So tell me about the Restore on Route 28.
Well, the Restore, as John said, is an economic engine that funds expansions, really, of habitats. So instead of building 1 house a year or 1 house every year and a third, Habitats can build 2, 3, 4, 5 houses a year. And they do that by generating money from sales of donated furniture, household materials, building materials, you name it. If it's gently used and able to be resold, we will take donations and have sales. We ask people in the community to come and shop, donate, and then volunteer.
Now, that building that you're in on Route 28, it's next to the Hess gas station, that was also donated to Habitat, wasn't it?
Yes. A small article in the newspaper my wife found about early '09 said that the Weedy family was looking at donating the building. And we met with them. There were several other not-for-profits also interested, but we were successful. A very kind donation. The building was in rough shape, and at the time, in fact, that Irene hit, as Carrie's mentioned, we were in the process of replacing a roof and had inside basically an empty shell. But we had warehouse space, and we had the capability of getting the stuff, and that's when we teamed, so that the storms that hit, both Irene and Lee, wound up delaying our process on rebuilding the building, but we felt for a much better cause at that point was immediate relief to the people that have been severely impacted by the storms.
So from the Wheaties Furniture family, which donated the building, it's now filled with donated furniture from people, which you're selling, and you're going gangbusters. You've had a good, strong opening, haven't you?
We had a very strong opening. We've been open 4 days. We had over 700 people come through the Restore, and people have purchased everything from glassware and silverware to antiques, hutches, bed frames, lighting, you name it. We've been selling it, and at very reasonable prices. One of the other important goals of the local Habitat is to recycle as much materials as we can, and when a good Restore is operating, up to 200 tons a year of materials can be saved from going into the landfill.
It's outstanding on all levels. Gentlemen, keep up the great work. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching Kingston Now. Next up, it's Haynes Llewellyn and Anna Brett of Friends of Historic Kingston to tell us about scarecrows coming to Frog Alley. Welcome back to Kingston Now. Last year, Friends of Historic Kingston and the Junior League presented Scarecrows of Frog Alley, and here to tell us about that in this year's event is Haynes Llewellyn and Anna Brett. Welcome to the show, folks.
Thank you very much.
Haynes, you were representing Friends of Historic Kingston. Anna, you're representing the Junior League. Let's start with you, Haynes. How did you get involved with Friends of Historic Kingston?
Friends of Historic Kingston, we bought a house in Uptown Kingston in 2007. And the house, Fred Johnston, who was the benefactor of the Johnston Museum, which is the Friends of Historic Kingston's museum and gallery, one of their properties, actually had restored our house in the 1960s. So we always jokingly say that the house and the Friends of Historic Kingston were kind of a matched pair that we got when we moved here.
And we have a ton of history in Kingston, as you've discovered since you've been here, right?
Exactly.
I mean, everything from, you know, the vice president under Thomas Jefferson buried in the graveyard at the Old Dutch Church, to all the stone houses, to the oldest four corners of the stone houses, yes, right?
Exactly. The only existing four stone house corner in the state of New York, actually.
Better said than me. And the Junior League, tell me about the Junior League, Anna.
The Junior League of Kingston is an organization of women that are committed to promoting volunteerism in the community. And we teach women skills to go out and do projects, to work with other organizations such as the Friends of Historic Kingston and Friends of the Forsyth Nature Center. We work with all kinds of groups. And we've been around since 1921. I'm not a member since then, but I've been a member for almost 40 years, and it's been a great group of women that really believe in their community and do things for women and children.
So tell me about last year's Scarecrows in Frog Alley. How did that idea come about?
Okay, it came about, I believe Haynes was involved with that, that we partnered with some people that own businesses in the area, and we decided why not do something around Halloween that would bring children out and also talk about the history of Frog Alley, which is very, very important. So that's how it all came together, and I think this year it's going to be bigger and better because we have more people involved, and there are scarecrows that have been made by all kinds of different groups, and pumpkin carving, cider and donuts.
The civilians can also make their own, right?
That's correct.
And there's a contest.
That's correct. And we're giving out prizes that have been donated by local businesses. So I think it's going to be a very exciting time. And the children get the opportunity to see what other people are doing and to actually visually see these very, very large scarecrows.
Are there guidelines to what can go into a scarecrow?
No, not really. It's up to you. Whatever you want to do.
Okay.
So last year we had scary ones, we had funny ones. It was a nice combination of things. So.
And Haynes, it takes place in Frog Alley. Why is it called Frog Alley? It's that very short block between North Front Street and Schwenk Drive. Why is it called Frog Alley?
The ruin that's there actually was the very end mark of the stockade when the actual stockade was built. And there actually was, the property used to extend back down toward the Ulster Savings Bank, and there was a stream back there. So that's kind of how the name Frog Alley derived. And then it used to be called Converse Street until 1975. And then once the Friends of Historic Kingston and the Ulster Garden Club took over the property there, it was actually given to them. Then the city changed the name back to Frog Alley.
And that house, that wreck, those ruins that you just mentioned, date to something like the late 1600s, is that correct?
About 1660. In 1974, they had an archaeological dig on two sides of the property. They were able to find bricks that dated back to the late 1600s. And the property was burned by the British. And also when they did the archaeological dig, they found all sorts of things that kind of show the progression of the family that lived there, how they went from being a very poor, modest family that started off in a grist mill, and then how they made money over time. And they did it all through looking at the types of bones and fish bones and things that were found, and like animal bones that were found in the archaeological dig. And also they found broken shards of Chinese export porcelain, which to be in the 18th century, that was a sign of wealth, if you were able to afford that. So it's a very interesting property, and the Friends is working on a project to restore the property, to stabilize the ruin and to actually open it up more to the public and take the fence that now surrounds it down. So the two Frog Alley projects of Scarecrows has been a kind of way to introduce people back to Frog Alley, because a lot of people pass by there, they don't really realize what it is. And Anna last year authored a great child-friendly story of the history of Frog Alley, which lots of people, the adults read, I think, more than the children did, actually.
Because they really don't know that it exists and why it's there, or the whole history behind it. So I think it's important. I'm a former principal, so I really think
You're
it's
an
important,
educator by nature,
yes,
yes.
to have the education. So I learned a lot just by doing the whole educational piece. So it's a great thing.
It's extraordinary, as I said at the outset of this segment, the history of Kingston. Sometimes I'll be walking in uptown Kingston, and a utility will be digging down in the street, and they'll cut, they'll dig 8 feet down, and you can see the width of the street, the expanse, and it goes down to stone and then to dirt. And I'm thinking that's like looking back in time.
It is, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's Frog Alley too. If you actually look near the ruin, there actually are some pieces of the actual Bluestone Road that was the colonial road. They've been slowly building that back, and they'll see once they get their new archaeological study done how they're going to reinvent the area and use the park. People would like to use it. So last year we just thought it'd be a great way to utilize the space, to bring people in. And when I was a kid, my granddad used to always make me a scarecrow every year. So that's kind of how we got started with the scarecrows.
So for the Scarecrows on Frog Alley, do you know the times of the event?
Yes, it's Saturday, October 19th, beginning at 10 o'clock in the morning and going to 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And just come and hang out and enjoy some cider and donuts. And
Sounds
hopefully
like
it'll be a beautiful weather day like today, and we'll draw some good crowd.
Well, it sounds like a great event, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. Thanks, Sam. This is Kingston Now. It's O Positive Festival time, and up next is Gaia, one of the amazing artists participating this year. Stay tuned. You're watching Kingston Now. The O Positive Festival is this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in uptown Kingston. O Positive is bartering the art of medicine for the medicine of art and features 3 days of music and visual and performance art. It's a grassroots way to get health care for artists who need it, provided by healthcare providers who believe in the health of the arts. And here with us is famed street artist Gaia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So you're participating in O Positive this year for your first time. How did you come to hear about O Positive?
I came to hear about O Positive from them approaching me. They wanted me to come. I was actually in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Got an email, responded accordingly. Wasn't sure if I could fit in the schedule. I'm really glad I was able to, because it's a fabulous wall, fabulous people, really cool mission, and they've treated me remarkably well so far, so I feel very, very welcome.
Is Sheboygan where you're from?
No, I'm from New York City. Murray Hill, Upper East Side, Hell's Kitchen. I've since moved to Baltimore, Maryland, but it's difficult to say where I live now because I travel about 11 months out of the year.
The notion of street art, can you
Sure.
give people sort of a little primer on what that is?
Street art as a movement, as we understand it now, has obviously been practiced for decades, and well, since cities have existed, there's been some sort of art in the streets. But the contemporary movement is a global, is on a global scale. People connected all over the internet, producing works within the streets, murals, performances, interventions, and whatnot, sort of an absurd umbrella, if you will, because it encompasses so much. But it is, in my definition, inherently illegal, so that we don't get too confused with muralism and public art and community art. You know, street art to me is an illegal act, but is intended for a broad audience. Whereas graffiti is very much a codified language intended for a small group of people who can read that language. Street art is very much about existing in abandoned spaces and in fallow spaces and making something beautiful.
It's funny because during the big boom in graffiti back in the late 70s, early 80s, at first people were really annoyed by it. And then suddenly people looked at it and said, oh, there's art in there.
Sure.
The people who are doing this are talented and there's a mission there.
Sure.
And the same is true for street art.
Yeah, it very much always exists in the wake of creative destruction or in the wake of any sort of calamity regarding an economic situation. So you have 1970, New York is literally going bust. The president tells them to go screw itself or something like that.
Right.
Graffiti emerges in the wake of MTA not having money to clean it up. Now MTA does. It's gone from the subway into the streets. I wouldn't necessarily say that the trajectory, my personal trajectory, has anything to do with that side of graffiti. I come from more mural, community arts, printmaking, educated background. But there's some fealty to that world for sure. And being in Baltimore, there are 40,000 vacant homes. You know, this kind of situation is not rare in the Northeast. Go to Cleveland, Detroit, Cincinnati, Youngstown, to find a very similar situation with a lot of canvas.
You're invited here, though, to be part of the O Positive Festival. So you're not really, it's not really an illegal act. You're being invited to do it. And you're working on a really great space. It's the back wall of BSP in Uptown Kingston, which is on Crown Street. It's probably 5 or 6 stories high, would you estimate?
6.
6 stories high?
6.5.
So we've actually had you come down off your scaffold, your motorized and mechanical scaffold today to come and be on the show. I've been watching your progress as you go. And do you have an idea of what you were going to do before you got here? Or did you have to look at the space and say, that's my inspiration?
I always come with a premeditated notion of what it is I'm going to eventually produce. And then I will inevitably be influenced, obviously, by the on-the-street experience, talking to people, what may be more to add, what to improvise. But for the most part, I come with the basic structure and execute that on a wall. Now, that entails a lot of research prior, which creates a difficult situation of playing catch-up. Because, you know, I might be in Wisconsin and I'm interviewing Hmong people from Laos about their experience in America. And then I go to Vladivostok and I have to do something about nationalism in Russia, dip into Moscow and then do something at Rice. And in the meantime, I'm developing a concept in its most basic form for O Positive, which is Artemis, a Greek god or a Greek
goddess,
goddess in derivation, emerging from this hole in Mother Earth, which is a quarry, which is of course what Kingston is literally founded upon, that industry with New York City in the background, the statues made of marble. You know, there's a lot of nice correlations between the work that I do. I always wanted to speak specifically to a place. That's the point. It's very site generated. I'm not a guerrilla branding artist. I try not to repeat the same image too much and whatever. I want the place to impact me as much as I am imposing myself upon it.
As an artist now who has sort of come out of the underground, right, in recent years.
I've always been out of the underground.
Oh, you have been?
I've been art educated, you know, like I went to a Waldorf school, and
okay.
I still balance both worlds. You know, I might go back into the underground, but yeah, please go on.
So has that changed at all now that that your art is in demand and that you're not just going out and finding a spot, doing it, and leaving it, and going away?
Yeah. I mean, demand's relative. You know, it could always be more or less, but but I have had to sign contracts for institutional projects where I do not do anything illegal. Although my sense of illegal is, once again, as I've said, in these fallow spaces, whether they're foreclosed homes or been vacant for decades, or they're these no spaces like underneath highways and whatnot. I'm not against anybody. I'm trying to cross social bridges through my artwork. My artwork becomes an excuse to be somewhere. If I'm on the west side of Baltimore, someone of my complexion should not be there in the eyes of the police or even sometimes in the residents. I might be copying drugs or doing anything illicit. With that artwork, I have an excuse to talk to people and be there. Why am I there? I'm here to put up this piece on this abandoned building. Why is it abandoned? Because that's the neighborhood that it's in. And that's the nature of history. But yeah, of course, it becomes more and more difficult to keep it real, as one would say.
Well, we're thrilled that you're here in Kingston, and we're thrilled to see the work you're doing here. So thank you for coming.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
That's it for this week's show. Thanks to John LaValle and Gary Heckleman of Habitat for Humanity. To find out more about the Restore, go to ulsterhabitat.org. Thanks to Haynes Llewellyn and Anna Brett of Friends of Historic Kingston. To find out more about Scarecrows of Frog Alley, go to fohk.org. And for more about the O Positive Festival, go to opositivefestival.org. Remember, all of our previous shows are available on the Kingston Now YouTube channel. You can find that link on our Facebook page. For Kingston Now, I'm Jimmy Buff. See you next time.